Getting burned on surveillance is one of the worst things that can happen to a surveillance investigator. However, getting burned on surveillance is part of the risk we all take while out there in the field. What are the top reasons you have been burned while conducting surveillance? Go down in the comments below and let me know. I know I have been burned on many occasions for many reasons, and they have all been huge lessons learned for me. So let's jump into the list of the top 10 reasons private investigators get burned on surveillance. First is the surveillance vehicle itself. Does it stand out or blend in? I once had an old Pontiac van I did surveillance in, and man, I loved that van. It had 2 rows of seats in the back, but each seat was individual, not bench seats. So I took out all of the seats except for the very middle one. Then I could sit on it, and I literally had a 360-degree view all around me. From the observational standpoint, that was absolutely ideal. I could park just about anywhere and watch just about anything from the comfort of that back seat. To top it off, it had no console for me to jump over, and I had tons of room in the back for all of my gear. And it was bright red, folks. I mean red, really red. Now, I had the surveillance vehicle only about 6 months before I realized a huge problem with it. It was red, really red, folks. Yes, I learned a huge lesson with this van. It simply stood out way too much. After that, I started buying soccer mom style vehicles with neutral colors to keep me as covert as possible while still providing some creature comforts I needed while out there on surveillance. This video is sponsored by OREP Insurance and Working PI Magazine. OREP is a leading provider of private investigator liability insurance. Visit orep.org for a quote today. Number 2 on our list is the initial stationary surveillance position and setup. Even if it is a mobile surveillance scenario, you will most likely have to set up stationary surveillance at the beginning. If you are too close to your subject's residence or location, you are more likely to be burned, to be sure. I generally recommend at least 3 or more house differences in space or even down the street on another block. Regardless of how well your vehicle blends in, if you are set up too close, your subject may well take notice of you and your car, as he will see it every time he leaves his house and may easily see you inside the vehicle or see you start the follow when he leaves. Pretexting makes a huge difference in surveillance burns, folks. I hate it when a client asks me to pretext, but sometimes it is just necessary. If I think I will have to pretext, I definitely try to keep my distance when I set up my stationary surveillance position. There is nothing worse than doing a pretext call or a pretext door knock than seeing your subject coming out of his house and looking up and down the streets, then staring at your vehicle and giving you the old evil eye. Even if he isn't looking at you, it will seem like he is. And then, when your nerves get frazzled, it will surely hinder the rest of the investigation. So preference is to never pretext. But if you have to, well, stay out of the neighborhood, if at all possible, for the remainder of the day. How soon you start the initial follow is a huge reason people get burned too. There is a fine line between going too soon and going too late. There is a bit of science and art in doing this. I usually wait until my subject is around the corner, over the hill, or a few blocks away before I engage the follow. Go too fast, you may get burned. Go too late, you may lose your target. This is pretty much a learned skill, but don't fret it if you aren't good at it to begin with. Just keep working on it and you will see improvement over time. Speaking of following, what do you do when you believe the subject is heading back home? If I think my subject is heading back home, I always pull back. And the closer they get to home, the further back I pull. And then there is this one major controversial thing that I do, or should I say, do not do. I do not follow them into the neighborhood. I know many people say you have to go in immediately to get that money shot. But if you have done your recon and your neighborhood analysis, you should know of some good locations where you might be able to obtain video without parking right on the same street that they live on. I try to find locations down the road a ways, even if it is a few blocks away. It is easier to get video there without getting burned, then after they have gone inside, I can regroup and I can reestablish stationary surveillance. Now, bonus tip time. Let's discuss that stationary surveillance position, folks. Don't have one stationary surveillance position in mind when you go out. Rather, have several ideas of where you can park. I rarely use the same stationary position twice in a row, especially if I just got done following my subject back home. Covert video is great, folks, and a must in most surveillance jobs. If your subject goes into a grocery store or mall or wherever, and it is safe to go in and get that covert video, then by all means do it. But make sure you change up your appearance either before you go in or after you have captured that covert video. I have seen it many times, folks. The PI is doing good, gets the video at the residence, has a successful follow, and then suddenly, after the subject is at their third stop, he suddenly becomes aware of the fact that he has seen this guy all morning. Carry hats, shirts, and even different glasses with you to change up your appearance each time. I wear glasses. I have sunglasses. I can go without my glasses. Teaming this up with a ball cap or a different style shirt can really make a big difference. Bonus tip again, if you don't wear glasses, you can get protective glasses that look like regular prescription glasses as well. Buy several types of sunglasses, not gaudy, bright colored ones, just different framed ones. Do you smoke? I did when I first started doing surveillance, and you know what? I always had a window cracked open when I smoked. And you know what? When I smoked with my window cracked open, the smoke was obviously visible to everyone outside of the car, telling them there was someone inside the vehicle smoking. I read a study not too long ago that said less than 15% of Americans smoke today. That means over 85% will be more aware of things like smoke rolling out of a window, as well the smell of smoke coming from a vehicle or a person. So if you smoke and your subject does not, when you are on foot surveillance and your paths cross, then your subject is even more likely to take notice because of the smoke smell you carry with you. A running vehicle on surveillance will get you noticed, folks. I know a lot of surveillance investigators today just don't care. Me, I try to never run my vehicle if at all possible. I know, it gets hot inside that car, and I know it gets cold inside that car. There are options for staying cool and warm, and running your car should not be one of them, except in the most extreme cases. Now let's go back to your surveillance vehicle really quick, folks. Blending in during the follow and blending in with the neighborhood are often two different things. I know it's not cheap to keep and maintain multiple vehicles for surveillance, but sometimes you may have to have two vehicles at your disposal. If you had a newer soccer mom crossover SUV, that might be great on the open road during a follow. But it may stand out like crazy if you are doing surveillance at a brownstone apartment building in the lower income areas of town. If needed, I will get a rental car for the day or borrow a car from a friend to make sure it fits the neighborhood. Bonus tip time again, don't always wash your car right before you go out on surveillance. Now, I usually park inside my garage. But if I'm going out on surveillance on a rural setting or in an area where a lot of older cars may be, I may park out in my driveway for a few days and let my car get a bit dirty. From my experience, one of the biggest reasons a PI gets burned on surveillance is blowing their cover because of paranoia. I have seen many a PI get nervous, get worried, start thinking they are burned when they are not, and start making mistakes out there. Keep in mind, just because your subject did something weird, it may be perfectly normal. Don't react too quickly and do anything out of place. Here is a great example I had once on a surveillance case I had. It was in a small rural town. The subject left his house and went to a convenience store, but he didn't go into the store. He drove around to the back of the store. He then went down a little dirt road towards a farm supply store. When he got to the end of that farm supply store, he stopped for a few seconds, which seemed like an eternity. He then suddenly flipped a U and drove right past me at a high rate of speed and got out onto a highway. I started to freak out a bit, but then I said to myself, "Self, settle down and get in the chase." And that is what I did. I flipped a U and I got on the highway just in a nick of time. I followed him a few miles to another town where he pulled into another convenience store parking lot, then went around to the back of the convenience store. I then started to worry a little bit, but I looked around and saw a location down the road a bit where I thought I might be able to see the rear of that store. Then, when I got all set up, I sat there and I got tons of video of my target as he washed his car in a self-service car wash. At the end of the day, I went back to that first convenience store where he went behind, went down a little road, and flipped a U. Lo and behold, at the end of that little road, there sat a self-service car wash that had out of order signs hung on all of the bays. Had I let my paranoia get the best of me, I would have never followed him out and would have gotten very little video.